The wedding hall was filled with laughter, luxury, and promises of forever. But behind closed doors, silence cut deeper than any blade. Dressed in her bridal gown, her heart raced with dreams of love, only to shatter when the man she called husband turned his back on her. No tender words, no touch, just rejection colder than marble walls. Tears welled, anger rising with every second of betrayal. "Why marry me if only to break me?" Her voice trembled in the darkness. Was this the price of loving a billionaire? Or the beginning of a story that would change everything? Love isn't always about riches or grand weddings. It's about trust, sacrifice, and second chances. If this story of heartbreak and redemption touches your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes true love can heal even the deepest wounds. My name is Adrian Blackwell, and for 33 years, I have lived a life most men can only dream of. The Blackwell name opens doors. My wealth commands respect. From glittering skyscrapers to private islands, I have everything money can buy. Everything except peace. People call me arrogant, cold, untouchable. They're not wrong. I built walls so high around my heart that no one dares to climb them. Why? Because I learned too early that love is dangerous. I watched my parents' marriage crumble under lies and betrayal. My father drowned himself in business deals while my mother sought affection elsewhere. And me? I learned that love is a weakness, one I could never afford. So I mastered control instead. Control over my empire, my image, my emotions. Relationships became transactions, measured in power, not passion. Women desired my fortune, not my soul. I gave them gifts, vacations, diamonds, never myself. I told myself it was enough. But deep down, when the parties ended and the limousines drove away, silence haunted me. I filled it with work, with wealth, with more power. And yet, the emptiness never faded. Marriage, to me, was a deal, an arrangement, another business transaction, nothing more. I never expected to find warmth in it, nor did I seek it. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. On my wedding night, staring into the eyes of the woman who dared to believe in love, I realized I wasn't prepared for the one thing I couldn't control: her heart. Her name was Isabella Hart, and she came into my life like an uninvited storm, calm on the surface, but capable of tearing down everything I thought was permanent. Our marriage wasn't born of love. It was arranged, a merger of families, power, and influence. To me, Isabella was just another part of a deal, a name signed on a contract, a bride chosen to strengthen an empire. Nothing more. At least, that's what I told myself. The first time I truly looked at her was not during the grand engagement party or the extravagant wedding preparations. It was one quiet morning when she walked into the Blackwell estate, sunlight spilling behind her. She carried herself with a grace that wasn't rehearsed, a dignity that wealth couldn't manufacture. She wasn't intimidated by the towering marble columns or the endless rows of staff. Her eyes held calm fire, as though she saw straight through the gold and the glamour, into the emptiness I tried to bury. Most women I'd met played roles: flirtation, admiration, submission. Isabella played none. She was polite but not eager, beautiful but not vain. And when I spoke, expecting the usual awe, she answered with steady confidence. It unsettled me. Something about her purity, her quiet strength, made me feel exposed. For the first time, I couldn't predict how someone would react to me. For the first time, I wondered if control wasn't enough. But I buried that thought quickly. This marriage wasn't about emotions. It was business. And I swore I would never give love the power to destroy me. Little did I know, she already had. The first weeks of our marriage felt like a chess match. I was the king, untouchable, used to moving people across the board as I pleased. But Isabella, she refused to play by my rules. I began with the usual tactics, the ones that never failed before. A brand new sports car appeared in the driveway, with her name etched on the plate. She smiled politely, thanked me, and never touched the keys. I had an entire wardrobe of designer gowns delivered from Paris. She placed them neatly in the closet, but chose instead to wear her simple, graceful dresses. I even arranged for a diamond necklace worth a fortune. When I clasped it around her neck, she removed it gently and said, "Adrien, jewelry doesn't prove love." Her words stung in ways I didn't expect. Love. That word had no place in my world. Yet, she spoke it so easily, like it was the only currency that mattered. I tried asserting my authority. "You're a Blackwell now," I told her one evening over dinner, the chandelier light catching on crystal glasses. "You have obligations, appearances to uphold." She met my gaze without flinching. "And you're my husband," she replied softly, "which means you owe me honesty, not appearances." No one had ever spoken to me like that. Most bowed to my name, but she challenged it with calm defiance. Instead of feeling insulted, I found myself intrigued and frustrated. The tension between us grew. At charity galas, where I expected her to smile like a perfect trophy, she spent more time with the staff, listening to their stories. At home, where silence used to be my comfort, her presence filled the halls with an energy I couldn't ignore. She hummed while reading, asked me questions I didn't want to answer, and looked at me with eyes that weren't impressed by my empire. The more she resisted, the more obsessed I became. Why wasn't she swayed by wealth, by power, by the very things the world worshipped me for? I offered her everything, yet she looked at me as though I had nothing. And in the quiet of those nights, when I lay awake in our vast bedroom, I realized the truth I hated most. Isabella didn't want my money, my control, or my empire. She wanted me, and I had no idea how to give her that. The wedding night should have been a celebration of union, but as I entered our suite, something was already wrong. The air felt thick, heavier than usual, as if the weight of our unspoken words had built walls between us. Isabella was standing by the window, staring out at the city lights, her gown flowing around her like a cloud. For a moment, I hesitated. She looked so fragile, like she could break under the weight of my indifference. But I shook that thought off quickly. I was Adrian Blackwell, and I wasn't supposed to care about her emotions. I walked towards her with the same confident strides that had carried me through countless business deals. "It's just you and me now, Isabella," I said, my voice low, a hint of arrogance slipping through. "Everything is yours." She didn't turn around. Instead, she clenched her fists, her back rigid. "Is it, though?" My pulse quickened. This wasn't the woman I had married. She was supposed to be grateful, to be in awe of everything I had given her. "What's wrong?" I asked, though the question was more out of curiosity than concern. Finally, she faced me. Her eyes were red, tears still lingering on her lashes, but there was no fear in them, no admiration, only pain and anger. "You've given me everything but yourself," she whispered. That hit me harder than I expected. But before I could respond, she continued, her voice rising. "I've spent my whole life searching for something real, something pure, and I thought you were it. But tonight, I realized the truth. You're just as empty as the men I've spent my life avoiding. You're so afraid of love, Adrien, that you can't even give it when it's staring you in the face." I felt my chest tighten, my throat dry. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, but the words stuck in my mouth. Instead, I watched as she broke down in front of me. "I can't bear this pain anymore," she cried. "You've rejected me without even trying, without even seeing me." For the first time in my life, I was speechless. The control I'd built up for years crumbled under her gaze. I had been so sure of my power, my wealth, my ability to control every situation. But in this moment, none of it mattered. She looked at me with the eyes of a woman who had finally seen the truth. "You're not worthy of love, Adrien. Not the way you are. And I won't waste my time on someone who refuses to see me." Her words struck me like a physical blow. but they also shattered something deep inside. For the first time in years, I felt vulnerable, like she had peeled away every layer of armor I'd built around myself. I stood there, frozen, watching as she left the room, her sobs echoing down the hall. And for the first time in my life, I felt the weight of the emptiness I had so carefully hidden away. The night felt endless. I stayed in the silence of our bedroom, the walls echoing with Isabella's words. Her rejection hit me harder than any business deal gone wrong. There was no price tag on what she had offered me, no way to buy back her love once I had broken it. I replayed the scene in my head over and over, her tear-streaked face, the trembling in her voice as she walked away. "You're not worthy of love." The words felt like a punch to the gut. I had always prided myself on being a man who controlled everything, but here I was, helpless. I wanted to fix it, to apologize, to make her understand. But how could I, when I had never understood myself? I spent the next few days locked away in my office, trying to bury the shame that clawed at me. Work, my empire, it all felt hollow now. The contracts, the meetings, the fancy dinners, all of it seemed so meaningless. Without her, without that raw honesty she had forced me to face, there was no joy in any of it. I had filled my life with power, wealth, and superficial accomplishments, but it was all empty. Isabella had seen through it all. She had peeled back the layers of control and wealth, exposing the lonely man beneath. And I hated her for it. But deep down, I knew she was right. I had been running from love, from connection, from real vulnerability. I had convinced myself that being untouchable, unemotional, and detached was a strength. But now, it felt like the greatest weakness of all. I began to notice the small things around me, things I had ignored for years. The way my staff greeted each other with genuine smiles, the laughter of the children from the orphanage I had built but never visited, the warmth in the eyes of people who didn't care about my money but cared about who I was as a person. For the first time, I saw what real love looked like. Not the transactional kind I had been offering my entire life, but the kind that didn't ask for anything in return. The kind that Isabella had given me, even when I didn't deserve it. But it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, about changing the man I had become. I started doing small things differently. I took a few minutes to thank my employees by name. I helped an elderly woman across the street, even though it was beneath my usual efficiency. I stopped seeing people as assets to be managed, and started seeing them as human beings. Isabella's absence felt like a hole in my chest, but I wasn't the same man who had sent her away in anger. I was slowly realizing that I couldn't fix everything in my life with money, and that love couldn't be controlled. But was it too late for me? Had I ruined everything with her? Or was there still a chance for me to earn back the love I had so carelessly thrown away? The days that followed were a strange mix of discomfort and quiet reflection. I couldn't stop thinking about Isabella, her words, her pain, and the truth I had been avoiding for so long. I was accustomed to being in control, to dictating outcomes, but this was different. This was about real change, not the kind that could be purchased or manipulated. I started small. Each morning I took a moment to personally thank my staff. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a simple good morning and a nod to each person I passed. I made sure to remember their names, something I had never bothered to do before. I found myself noticing things I hadn't before. The way the receptionist smiled when she greeted me, the way the janitor hummed while cleaning, or how the chefs prepared meals with care. Not just to serve, but because it brought them joy. At home, I began to change too. I stopped throwing money at problems. I didn't try to impress her with grand gestures or expensive gifts anymore. Instead, I spent my evenings working on small things, things that didn't require money but effort. I began cooking dinner, not because I thought she would be impressed, but because I wanted to show her that I was capable of doing something for her that didn't involve buying it. I started writing her small notes, not filled with promises, but with gratitude for her patience and the lessons she had taught me. I began volunteering at the orphanage I had built, something I had always neglected. When I went there, I didn't take a bodyguard or staff with me. I went as Adrian Blackwell, the man who wanted to make a difference, not just a name on a building. It was there that I truly began to understand the power of giving without expecting anything in return. I wasn't the king anymore. I was just another person trying to make the world a little bit better. At home, I started to notice Isabella in a way I never had before. She wasn't just my wife. She was a person who had dreams, fears, and hopes of her own. She still kept her distance, still hesitant, but I could see the cracks in the walls she had built around herself. One evening, I found her in the garden, looking at the stars. She was alone, as she often was, and I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do or say. Finally, I spoke, keeping my voice soft, not demanding her attention, but simply wanting to be present. "Isabella," I said quietly, "I've been thinking. I've spent my whole life thinking I could buy everything, including love. But I was wrong. I don't know if I can ever undo the damage I've done, but I promise I'll spend every day trying. You don't have to forgive me, but I'd like a chance to show you I'm more than just my name, my money, or my mistakes." She didn't look at me immediately, but I noticed the slight shift in her posture. The walls were still there, but they were no longer as solid. She didn't speak at first, and for a moment I thought she might walk away, but she didn't. "I'm not sure I can trust you again, Adrien," she said softly. "But you're different now. I see that. And maybe that's a good place to start." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a grand confession of love, but it was something real. Over the next few weeks, our relationship began to change, not in explosive ways, but in small, almost imperceptible ways. We talked more, shared our thoughts, and slowly, cautiously, Isabella started to open up. The emotional distance between us began to shrink, and while she still kept a part of herself closed off, I could feel her warmth returning. I had stopped trying to win her love through money or manipulation. Instead, I worked to earn it through kindness, humility, and patience. And slowly, I began to see her trust in me again, not because of anything I could give her, but because of who I was becoming. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't know if I would ever be the man she deserved. But I was no longer the arrogant billionaire who thought he could buy love. I was a man who was learning, growing, and hoping, for the first time in my life, that love could heal the wounds I had caused. 6 months had passed since that fateful night, and in all that time I had made more progress than I ever thought possible. The arrogance, the walls I had built around myself, bit by bit, they had come down. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. I was no longer the man I had been. Isabella still lived with me, though our marriage had evolved from a transaction into something far more complex. We didn't speak of love, not yet, but I could feel it in the air between us. There was a gentleness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a warmth that I had once thought unreachable. She no longer kept her distance as she had when I was the billionaire who thought he could buy her affection. Instead, she smiled more, laughed more, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide who I was. But I knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. I had to show her that I was different, that my transformation wasn't a fleeting act of guilt, but a deep, lasting change. And so, I began to plan the one thing I had never allowed myself to do. A grand gesture, but this time, without the gold or the diamonds, without the luxury, just me. It was a quiet Sunday when I took her by the hand and led her out of the house, without any explanation. She asked no questions, only followed me, curious but not suspicious. We drove in silence for what felt like an eternity, until we reached the one place I had avoided for years, the orphanage I had built but never visited, the place where my wealth was supposed to make a difference, but where I had never bothered to offer anything beyond a donation check. Isabella was surprised when we arrived. She looked at me, puzzled, as we stepped out of the car. "Why here, Adrian?" I smiled softly, realizing that this place had always been part of my awakening. "I'm not the man I was before," I said quietly. "And I want to show you. This is where it starts." We walked inside, and for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. The children greeted us with shy smiles, their eyes lighting up as they recognized me, not as a billionaire, but as someone who had finally taken the time to care. I knelt down to speak with them, asking about their dreams, their favorite subjects, their aspirations. It wasn't much, but I listened. As I stood up, I saw Isabella watching me, a look of both surprise and something softer in her gaze. "I've been so selfish," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "For so long, I thought I could buy love. I thought I could fix everything with money. But I've spent my life neglecting what matters. I've neglected you and the world around me. I want to change that, Isabella. I want to be better. For you, for them, for myself." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. I could feel her heart opening again, but the true test was yet to come. Later that evening, I took her to the garden where we had first spoken, where everything had begun. The flowers were blooming, the night sky stretched endlessly above us, and the air was calm. It felt like the world had paused, waiting for what I was about to do. I turned to face her, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about giving her the world, because I knew that wasn't what she wanted. It was about showing her who I had become, who I was willing to be. "Isabella," I said, my voice raw with emotion, "I know I've hurt you. I know I've failed you in ways I can't undo. But I want to spend every day for the rest of my life trying to make up for it. I want to show you that love isn't something I can control. It's something I want to give, to earn, to nurture. Will you give me that chance?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. There was no diamond ring this time, no extravagant gesture, just a silver band, unadorned but for the inscription on the inside. "I choose you, not because of your wealth, but because of your heart." I knelt down in front of her, something I had never imagined myself doing. My pride, my arrogance, were nowhere to be found. All that remained was the man who had fallen in love with a woman who had taught him what it truly meant to live. "Will you marry me, Isabella? Will you give me the chance to prove that I'm the man you deserve?" She stood there, looking down at me, her chest rising and falling with every breath. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. I felt like the air had frozen, and I was suspended in time. And then, finally, her lips parted, and she whispered, "Yes." It wasn't the grand declaration I had once imagined. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was just two people standing in the quiet of a garden, willing to trust each other again. As I slipped the simple band onto her finger, I realized that love wasn't about making grand gestures. It was about being vulnerable, showing up when it mattered most, and proving every single day that you're worthy of the one you love. And in that moment, I knew my life had truly begun. Love is not about perfection, nor is it about wealth or power. True love is built on trust, vulnerability, and the willingness to grow together. Adrien and Isabella's story reminds us that no matter how far we've strayed, there's always a chance to change, to learn, and to love with all our hearts. It's never too late to open yourself to the possibility of real connection and find the courage to be the person you've always needed to be. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in second chances and the transformative power of love, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because love, when given freely and truly, has the power to change everything. Thank you for watching, and remember, love is the greatest gift we can give.